The sacred morning mist, cool and heavy, clung to the ancient teak trees of Maitong, wrapping the forest in a silence that felt ancient and profound. For 73 years, Panya Surya had woken to this symphony of nature, a harmony of unseen rustles and distant bird calls. Today, however, that silence was fractured, not by a sound, but by an absence. An unnatural stillness hung in the air, heavy and foreboding, a discordant note in the familiar rhythm of dawn. His worn hands, calloused from decades of tilling the fertile soil, pushed aside a curtain of dripping leaves as he stepped into a small clearing. The sight that greeted him stole the breath from his lungs and twisted his gut. There, bathed in the soft, ethereal glow of the rising sun struggling through the canopy, stood Mei Sai. The matriarch, a behemoth of leathery gray skin and formidable tusks, was a figure of sorrowful immobility. Her head was bowed, her massive ears drooped, and her trunk, usually a vibrant instrument of curiosity and affection, lay curled limply on the ground. She was a statue carved from grief, unmoving, unlike any elephant Panya had ever witnessed in mourning. Before her, a tiny form lay utterly still. Maysai's calf. His heart clenched. He'd known this calf since its birth, a playful spirit always at its mother's heels. Now it was devoid of life, its small body unnaturally rigid, a stark contrast to the vibrant energy that should have pulsed beneath its soft, wrinkled skin. The typical sounds of an elephant herd's lament, the low rumblings, the gentle nudges, the mournful cries were absent. Maysay stood sentinel, not merely heartbroken, but something far more chilling, terrified. Her eyes, usually intelligent and serene, held a primal fear that Panya had only seen in animals hunted by predators. This was not the natural sorrow of a mother losing her young to illness or accident. This was something else entirely. Panya, his weathered face a mask of grim concern, knelt cautiously a few yards away, his old joints protesting the movement. He knew these creatures, had lived alongside them for decades, understood their silent language better than most men. Maysai's stillness, the sheer, crushing weight of her silent terror, was the first undeniable signal. His gaze swept the ground around the calf, searching for a sign, anything that could explain this profound wrongness. That's when it hit him, a faint, acrid smell, metallic and chemical, alien to the pristine forest air. It prickled his nostrils, a sour note in the sweet, earthy scent of dawn. His eyes narrowed, scanning the damp earth. Near the calf's head, where the soil was churned by Maysai's desperate, futile attempts to rouse her child, he saw it. A thin, almost imperceptible film, iridescent in the dappled light, shimmered on a cluster of fallen leaves. It caught the light, shifting from an unnatural purple to a sickly green, almost oily in its texture. Panya carefully extended a trembling hand, plucking a leaf. The residue clung to his fingers, a sticky, unsettling substance. It felt wrong, looked wrong, smelled wrong. His blood ran cold. This wasn't a natural death. This wasn't the forest taking back its own. This was human-made. Something profoundly wrong, something toxic and insidious, had invaded their sacred space, desecrating it with a silent, unseen weapon. The iridescent residue, the acrid smell, the calf's unnatural stillness, and Maysai's palpable, silent terror. It coalesced into a horrifying certainty. A surge of anger, cold and steady, replaced his initial shock. He felt the weight of a silent covenant with these forests, with these magnificent beings who shared his home. He looked at Maysai, her immense presence radiating a silent plea, a desperate challenge to the inhumanity that had stolen her child. An unspoken promise formed in Panya's mind, a vow as ancient and unyielding as the trees around them. He would uncover the truth. The implicit warnings of official park silence, the whispered rumors of corruption and powerful interests that often dismiss such incidents as natural occurrences, faded into insignificance. His duty, his heart, demanded more. He would not let this go. The acrid scent of the iridescent residue still clung to Panya's fingers, a grim reminder of the morning's horror. His mind reeled with the implications, but his heart, heavy with sorrow for Maysai, demanded action. The park's stringent observe-only protocol, designed to keep human interference minimal, felt like a betrayal now. How could he merely observe when a silent, Insidious evil had crept into their sanctuary. A profound sense of injustice burned within him, overriding caution, pushing him towards an agonizing, yet inevitable, decision. He would perform the traditional funeral ceremony for the calf, a sacred rite that defied every official guideline. He found Dr. Naran by the park office, a man whose dedication to both the forest and its creatures was undeniable, yet whose adherence to regulations was equally unwavering. Naran, his brow furrowed with concern, listened patiently to Panya's plan. "Panya, you know the rules," Naran began, his voice laced with an exasperated sympathy. "We can't interfere, not directly. It complicates investigations, jeopardizes permits. The rangers will have you out of here, or worse. This is a protected area, a national park. Your actions will be seen as a direct challenge, an insubordination." Panya met Naran's gaze, his own eyes holding an unshakable resolve. "This isn't about permits, Naran. This is about respect. This is about truth. Maysai deserves more than a clipboard and a sample bag. Her grief is real, and it's tainted by something unnatural." He gestured to the forest. "The whispers of the wild, Naran. They're telling me something is deeply wrong. And the elephants, they asked me." Naran sighed, running a hand through his already disheveled hair, knowing the futility of arguing with Panya's quiet determination when it came to the elephants. By late afternoon, the clearing transformed. Panya, clad in simple, faded white ceremonial garments, had constructed a small bamboo shrine. The air grew thick with the sweet, calming smoke of incense, a stark contrast to the earlier acrid scent. He knelt, his movements slow and deliberate, lighting joss sticks, offering prayers to the forest spirits for the lost calf. Maysai stood incredibly close, her massive form a comforting presence. Her trunk, once curled in despair, now gently swayed, occasionally brushing Panya's shoulder with a feather-light touch, an unprecedented show of trust and gratitude. Her intelligent, sorrowful eyes were fixed on him, reflecting not just grief but an eerie understanding. Behind her, the rest of the herd had formed a silent, watchful semicircle. Her eldest daughter, Dao, stood firm, while the younger elephants, including a curious ploy, huddled close, their gazes intense. It was more than just a gathering. It was a vigil, a collective participation in a forbidden ritual. They swayed in unison, a low guttural rumble passing through the herd, a sound Panya recognized as both mourning and a shared affirmation. This was not merely instinctual behavior. It was a deeply ritualistic display, a testament to their profound intelligence and emotional depth. As Panya offered the final prayers, Ploy, the young elephant, nudged him gently with her trunk, then again, insistent, towards a specific patch of forest floor near where the calf had lain. Panya followed her gaze, his heart quickening. There, nestled amongst the damp leaves and decaying wood, was a cluster of fungi he'd never seen before. They pulsed with a subtle, unnatural bioluminescence, glowing a faint, otherworldly purple-green. It was the exact hue he'd seen in the iridescent residue that morning, now amplified, undeniably present. The glowing mushrooms, in combination with the elephant's deliberate guidance, hit Panya with the force of a physical blow. His worst fears were confirmed. This wasn't a random chemical spill. It was something alive, insidious, actively growing in their sacred forest. The elephants knew. They were communicating silently but powerfully, sharing a truth beyond human words. A cold dread seeped into Panya's bones, but it was quickly overshadowed by a burning resolve. He looked from the glowing fungi to Maysai, then to the watchful eyes of the herd. Their silent plea, their shared wisdom, cemented his decision. He would not just mourn, he would investigate. He would find out what this was, what had killed the calf, and who was responsible. He knew the warnings from the park rangers would intensify, that he was stepping onto a dangerous path, but to turn back now with such an undeniable testament from the animals themselves was unthinkable. The ethereal glow of the mushrooms pulsed in the deepening twilight, a beacon of unnatural light that drew Panya back to the clearing. He was certain now, these fungi were not just a symptom, but a clue, a marker pointing to a deeper, more insidious truth. The memory of Maysai's silent plea, the collective urgency of the herd, resonated within him, propelling him forward despite the growing apprehension in his chest. As he approached, Maesai emerged from the shadows of the forest, her immense form a silhouette against the fading light. She didn't merely watch, she moved with a purpose, her massive head turning, her trunk gently nudging Panya deeper into the dense jungle. The rest of the herd followed, their movements coordinated, a silent, powerful escort. This was more than guidance. It was an active leading, a deliberate instruction. They navigated through thick undergrowth, past ancient trees whose roots snaked across the forest floor. Panya, flashlight in hand, struggled to keep pace with the elephant's determined strides. Then Maesai stopped abruptly, her trunk extended, pointing. Behind her, Dao and the other elephants began to actively push aside tangled vines and large ferns, revealing a hidden stream, its waters glinting faintly in the gloom. And there, partially submerged, nestled among the roots and mud, was the source of their terror, a discarded, corroded metallic container. Panya's heart hammered against his ribs. He shone a small, battery-powered flashlight on it. Faded hazard symbols, barely discernible beneath layers of grime and rust, adorned its side. And eerily, the same unnatural purple-green fungi he'd seen in the clearing now clung to its surface, thriving on the seepages. A viscous, iridescent liquid oozed from a small crack, slowly mingling with the stream's flow, disappearing into the earth. The elephants' behavior was a stark, organized protest, their silent communication screaming the source of the danger. Their communal fear, their mother's vengeance, was now laid bare. This was the silent killer, polluting their sacred water, poisoning their young. Shaken, Panya carefully collected a sample of the fungal growth and some of the iridescent liquid. He knew he had to confront Naran, despite the vet's initial dismissiveness. Back at the park office, Naran, still preoccupied with official protocols, listened with a skeptical frown as Panya recounted his discovery. Panya, these are elephants, not detectives. Their behavior, while remarkable, can be interpreted in many ways. You're assigning human intention to animal instinct, conflating it with old superstitions. Superstition? Panya retorted, his voice tight with frustration. He placed the evidence on Naran's desk. Then explain this. And the symbols, Naran, they're not local. They look like old research markings. A strange symbol, a triangle with a jagged line through it, like lightning over an inverted crescent. I saw similar ones in old academic papers about biocontainment. Naran picked up the fungi sample, his expression shifting. The initial dismissiveness began to crack, replaced by a visible discomfort. He looked at the iridescent liquid, then back at Panya, a flicker of unease in his eyes. The cryptic description of the symbols, something beyond simple hazardous waste, seemed to unsettle him deeply. As Panya left Naran's office, his phone vibrated with an anonymous message. "Stop digging, old man. Some things are best left buried." The words, stark and chilling, solidified his belief. This was no accident. This was a deliberate cover-up, and he was treading on dangerous ground. He returned to the forest as dusk deepened, the air heavy with humidity. The herd was waiting. As Panya approached, they formed a loose circle around him, a low, powerful rumble emanating from their chests. It wasn't a threat, it was a symphony of acknowledgement, a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to course through the very earth. Maesai reached out her trunk, gently stroking his arm, her eyes conveying a profound gratitude, a silent thank you for listening to their unheard cries, for seeing their truth. The weight of their trust and the anonymous threat settled heavy on Panya's shoulders. He was no longer just a farmer, he was their advocate, a lone man against an unseen enemy, fighting for the heart of the wild. The samples of glowing fungi and iridescent liquid, carefully collected from the hidden stream, were Panya's truth, his irrefutable evidence. He, a simple farmer, now a reluctant whistleblower, tried to report his findings through every official channel he knew, from local authorities to provincial environmental agencies. He compiled his notes, meticulously documenting the location of the container, the strange symbols, the unnatural deaths. But each attempt met a dead end. Calls went unreturned. Email attachments failed to send. Finally, when he visited the district office in person, The small bag containing his samples, left momentarily on a counter, vanished without a trace, as if swallowed by the very air. A cold, dread certainty settled over him. This was no bureaucratic oversight. Someone was actively working against him. Dr. Naran, his usual professional composure now frayed, sought Panya out under the guise of discussing routine park matters. His voice, usually direct, was hushed, his gaze darting nervously. "Panya," he began, leaning in, "the container and those symbols. I've heard whispers, old stories about a certain type of research, highly sensitive. It's best you just let it go, for your own safety." Naran didn't explicitly mention powerful forces, but the implication hung heavy in the humid air, a suffocating presence. His genuine concern was palpable, a stark contrast to his earlier skepticism, confirming Panya's worst fears. Within days, the atmosphere around the clearing where the calf had died, and indeed around Panya's own humble farmhouse, shifted. Park rangers, usually friendly and familiar, now patrolled with an increased vigilance. Their gazes linger a little too long, their presence a little too constant. They cited unauthorized activity and disturbance of wildlife, politely but firmly redirecting anyone, including Panya, from approaching the memorial site. The subtle cordon effectively isolated Panya, and by extension, the elephants. The land that had been his sanctuary now felt like a cage, the invisible net tightening around him. That night, the heavy rain streaked down the windows of his rustic wooden home, each drop a percussive reminder of his isolation. Inside, the flickering light of an oil lamp cast dancing shadows across his weathered face. He sat alone, hunched over a crudely drawn map of the forest, painstakingly marking the suspected contamination points. A government stop work order, vaguely worded but undeniably threatening, was tacked to a wooden post in the background, a stark reminder of the official narrative he was defying. Panya faced an agonizing decision. The anonymous warning message, Niran's hushed advice, the vanished evidence, the constant surveillance, all pointed to one inescapable truth. His life was on the line. He could retreat, return to his fields, ensure his own safety and that of his small, extended family. He could pretend he hadn't seen, hadn't heard, hadn't felt the crushing injustice. But through the open window, beyond the drumming rain, the faint, massive silhouette of Masai stood in the distant clearing. A phantom of grief, a beacon of trust, a constant reminder of the promise he'd made. The memory of the dead calf, its small, still form, and Masai's terrified grief, replayed in his mind. The sacred bond he'd forged with the elephants, built on decades of mutual respect and unspoken understanding, now felt like a heavy burden and an undeniable call to action. To expose a truth that the government or a powerful corporation desperately wanted to bury would mean risking everything. His reputation, his freedom, his very life. But to do nothing, to turn away now, would be to betray not just Masai, but the very spirit of the Maitang forest itself. His hands trembled as he traced a line on the map, a path forward into the unknown. He knew the cost, felt the cold tendrils of fear, yet Masai's silent pleas compelled him to act. He had to push forward. He had to uncover the truth, no matter the personal cost. What you're about to hear next is beyond anything I could have imagined. If you've been following Panya's journey, you know the stakes have been rising. But what he discovers in this part, it's a shocking turn of events that plunges him and these magnificent elephants into immediate life-threatening danger. So stay with me. Hit that like button if you're gripped, share this story, and subscribe to unravel this terrifying conspiracy together. Panya, fueled by defiance and the silent promise to Masai, knew he had to act. The tight surveillance, the vanishing evidence, the anonymous threats, it all solidified his resolve. He couldn't fight a faceless enemy in the shadows. He needed light and he needed witnesses. His desperate plan hinged on using the annual memorial ceremony for the Maitang forest spirits as a distraction. Whispers had spread among the sympathetic villagers about Panya's concerns, and a few brave souls, including a now fully committed Dr. Naran, agreed to help. While the official park rangers focused their attention on monitoring the ceremonial gathering, a carefully coordinated exodus began. Under the cloak of a moonless night, Mei Sai and her herd, in a breathtaking display of organized intelligence, initiated a silent migration. It wasn't just her family. Word, or perhaps some deeper instinct, had spread. Other elephant families from neighboring sectors of the forest began to converge, their massive forms moving with an uncanny purpose. They weren't merely walking, they were orchestrating. With Maasai at the lead, they bypassed well-worn trails, instead crashing through dense, unexplored thickets, their collective power forging a path through the untouched jungle. Their destination was clear, guided by an unseen map in their ancient minds, the site of the hidden stream, the source of the poisoned waters. As the herd approached the location Maasai had pointed out to Panya days earlier, the forest opened into a clearing far larger than Panya had anticipated. It was no mere streamside dump. Here, concealed by an ingenious canopy of dense foliage and camouflage netting, was a clandestine operation, vast and chilling. What appeared from the outside to be a remote forestry research station, innocently tucked away, was in fact a highly sophisticated, toxic waste dump, run by a powerful conglomerate Panya had only heard whispered about in hushed tones. TerraCorp. The scene that unfolded before Panya was a horror show. Vast pools of iridescent, glowing sludge, the very same purple-green hue he'd seen on the calf and the mushrooms, oozed from corroded industrial pipes, snaking across the forest floor and seeping into the earth. The air, heavy and humid from a recent rain, was thick with a metallic, acrid stench that burned Panya's nostrils. He pulled out his aging smartphone, his hands trembling, and began to record, the screen's stark light illuminating the environmental catastrophe. As the elephants fanned out, their immense bodies a living, breathing shield, they seemed to deliberately push aside camouflaged tarpaulins and overgrown vegetation, revealing more of TerraCorp's hidden infrastructure. Panya documented the toxic sludge, the advanced hidden surveillance systems subtly tucked into the trees, their red eyes blinking in the gloom. He zoomed in on discarded barrels, capturing the biomarkers that, he instinctively knew, traced back to a highly experimental, illegal waste disposal method, the very symbols Naran had flinched at. Suddenly, a harsh shout pierced the night. Shadows detached themselves from the deeper forest, armed figures, TerraCorp security, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. They had been alerted. The elephants, sensing the imminent threat, moved swiftly. Mei Sai and her herd, along with the other elephant families, formed an impenetrable protective wall between Panya and the approaching security team. Their eyes, reflecting the eerie glow of the toxic waste, burned with a silent, defiant protest. "You won't get away with this," Panya yelled, his voice hoarse, his phone still recording as he backed away. The security personnel, shouting orders, hesitated, faced with the formidable, unyielding wall of elephants. It was a momentary reprieve, but Panya knew it wouldn't last. A bullet whizzed past his ear, embedding itself in a nearby tree. His life was explicitly threatened. He narrowly escaped capture, the elephants holding their ground, their silent roar of defiance giving him just enough time to scramble into the deeper jungle. The full, terrifying extent of the conspiracy laid bare. He had the proof, but now he was a hunted man. Panya's escape from TerraCorp's armed security had been a terrifying scramble through the rain-slicked jungle, guided by the trumpeting warnings of the elephants and his own desperate will to survive. He clutched his smartphone, its digital memory holding the damning truth of the toxic wasteland. Exhausted, bruised, but alive, he made contact with a small, independent investigative news outlet Dr. Nirant Baum had discreetly connected him with. Within hours, the raw, unfiltered footage of the glowing sludge, the corroded containers, the secret surveillance, and Panya's frantic testimony began to spread. The elephant's coordinated action, leading him to the hidden dump and protecting him, became a global sensation. The sacred Maitang forest, once a sanctuary, was now a worldwide focal point. TerraCorp, a colossal entity with deep pockets and even deeper connections, reacted with immediate, furious force. Their PR machine spun into overdrive, attempting to discredit Panya as a superstitious old farmer, an eco-terrorist, and a fabrication artist. They dismissed the elephant behavior as a random act of nature, a migration route gone awry, tempting to paint the glowing waste as naturally occurring bioluminescence or a harmless agricultural runoff. The narrative was meticulously crafted, designed to sow doubt and bury the inconvenient truth under a mountain of corporate lies. But TerraCorp's campaign, however well-funded, couldn't withstand the undeniable. The sheer volume of elephant families, not just Maysai's herd, but dozens of others, had converged on the contaminated site. They maintained a continuous, organized protest, their massive forms standing sentinel, their silent defiance broadcast across every news channel. Day after day, the elephants, led by Maysai, would subtly direct journalists, researchers, and even skeptical officials to specific points of interest: a particularly virulent pool of sludge, a new crack in a pipe, the location where the calf had died, connecting the dots that even the most jaded observer could not ignore. Maysai, in particular, became the silent face of the movement. Her intelligent eyes, filled with both sorrow and a fierce determination, communicated directly with Panya, now openly demonstrated to the world. She would gently nudge him, turn her head towards a specific area, or let out a low rumble that resonated with profound meaning, proving to the world that these were not random acts, but intelligent, deliberate communications. This undeniable bond, this visible proof of a species actively seeking justice, became the emotional core of the unfolding drama, dismantling TerraCorp's carefully constructed facade. The final confrontation was not a physical battle in the jungle, but a global media storm and a relentless legal war. Environmental lawyers, human rights advocates, and international NGOs descended upon Maitong, armed with Panya's footage, the elephant's unwavering testimony, and Dr. Naran's now open scientific analysis. Government officials, initially complicit or intimidated, found themselves unable to ignore the overwhelming public outcry and irrefutable evidence. TerraCorp's operations in Maitong, and eventually in other parts of the world, came under intense scrutiny. The original memorial site where Maysai had first mourned her calf transformed. It was no longer just a place of grief, but a symbol of truth and natural justice. Journalists and supporters gathered there, and other elephant families, in a touching act of solidarity, created small, symbolic platforms around Panya's humble shrine, decorating them with forest elements, mirroring the initial funeral ceremony Panya had bravely performed. The toxic wasteland, now partially visible and cordoned off under international oversight, served as a stark, horrifying monument to corporate greed. Panya Surya, the weathered farmer who had risked everything, along with Mai Sai and the elephants of Maitong, became unlikely heroes. Their story echoed across continents, a powerful testament that even in the face of immense corporate corruption and government complicity, the whispers of the wild, the unheard cries of nature, could expose the darkest secrets and ignite a global movement for change, proving that the deepest truths often resonate from the most unexpected voices. The Maitang forests began their slow, painful journey towards healing, a beacon of hope for a world that had almost forgotten to listen.